Okay, good evening all. We're going to have a look at some games from the French Championship. So in particular, I want to have a look at Romain Edouard. Okay, so Romain Edouard. There's a few people on roughly the same points actually, but he was playing in Hastings, so I thought I'd choose him. And some of his games are quite interesting. So in this game he was white against Emmanuel Bricard. So E4 was played. So Bricard just lower FIDE rating than him, 2502. So white, his FIDE is 2587. So a French defence. And actually after d4, d5 to the two main choices. The two main choices. Okay. So we have either here Knight c3 or Knight d2 as the two main choices. So what was played was actually Knight c3. So this is inviting the mainline winner. So Bishop b4. Of course, I hope everyone knows that Knight d2 is named after Siegbert Tarrasch. You know, the Tarrasch variation. So you've either got Knight d2 or Knight c3 as the main moves here. Probably, well, I think in recent years actually Knight d2 is a little bit more popular now, the Tarrasch. But anyway, the main line winner, that was like the main line for a long time, hence main line winner. So Bishop b4, e5. And now usually black would play, you know, c5 here. To strike a blow at the d4 pawn to try and undermine white's centre, and that usually encourages a3. But in this game black played Knight e7. So Knight e7. Okay, so what does white do here? What would you do as white? If c5 hasn't been played, is it still an emergency to sort of try and strengthen d4? Well, Roman does this anyway, actually. He doesn't wait for c5. If black doesn't play c5, I mean, there's going to be a problem untangling these pieces anyway. So a3. So black takes, white takes, and c5 anyway. So we've just transposed, and now we have a very sharp move, Queen g4. So this is like in one of the most like razor sharp, you know, lines of the winnower, where black is often gambiting that g7 pawn. In exchange, you know, gets a dangerous kind of initiative. And here though, black decided to play another idea, another line, just king f8, not gambiting g7. Now this might imply a slightly passive game for black. Especially, you know, if white can exert more pressure on g7, sometimes this rook's going to be handy, and sometimes therefore, you know, a rook move like this might be handy against g7. Okay, so how does white play this? Knight f3. Okay, after queen a5. Bishop d2 to protect the c3 pawn. Now queen a4. So what does white do about c2? Now if you play bishop d3 here, it doesn't help c2 because black could actually play c4 quite usefully. And then queen takes c2, so that would be pretty nasty. And then the queen could always come back to g6 and there's nothing, and you just lost the pawn. So basically what do you do about the c2 pawn here? Well, I've seen this move before, I think in one of Nigel Short's games. It's an unusual move, but it fits the requirements. An unusual rook move. See, rooks usually thrive on open lines and files. But the rook's not too far from an open file after this next move. Rook a2, just protecting c2 laterally. And keeping an eye on a3, of course. And later, you know, maybe rook b2 and then back on the b file. Okay. So black played b6. It's a logical idea just to try and trade these bishops, because then, you know, usually these squares are a bit weakened. If black can get this trade in, often that's a good idea. Because remember, white's pawns are on the dark squares, so he's weakened like these squares anyway. Okay, so queen f4. That's another interesting move. Just, you know, maybe knight g5 coming. Knight g5 just to hit f7. Knight g6 evicting the queen. Queen moves back. And then we have this strategic exchange. Strategically useful exchange of bishops. Okay. White doesn't take an a6, but instead just plays bishop d3, inviting potentially, you know, doubling of pawns maybe. But for the moment, black played knight c6. And here, actually, of course, with the queen on e3, there's pressure on c5. So d takes c5, just winning a pawn. You know, if takes, there's the option of winning a pawn. Black took on d3 here. And after c takes d3, of course, white's a pawn up. But, you know, black's getting some compensation here. The queen is kind of tied to e5 now, because these both these knights are attacking e5. So it has the queen's responsibility to e5 being increased here. Black plays an active move now, queen b5. So there's an immediate threat of actually queen b1 check, just picking up the rook. So does white, and also of course it's attacking c5. So black's regaining the pawn, in fact, with this move queen b5. Okay, so king e2 against queen b1, that's been parried. But can white use the b file now? Okay, that's the question. Black's going to regain the pawn, and you know, e5 is going to have to be supported, or is it? And then there's the b file question. So queen takes c5. So white takes on c5 and doesn't bother reinforcing e5 with d4, but instead counterattacks now on this pawn with bishop e3. So bishop e3 is also going to be with check. So that's fairly unpleasant. So black actually plays d4 here, which temporarily blocks that diagonal. C takes, knight takes. Black regains on e5. So what's the situation now? So we're back to being equal on pawns, 5 pawns each. But white has more active rooks, and we sometimes see this in these high-level games, that it's a pair of active rooks, you know, which can make the big difference for white's initiative, often winning games. Just white having slightly active rooks, more active than black out of the opening, that can be, the winning thing. Sorry, Soham22. Why to take the pawn with the queen? Why not b takes c5? Because the black queen is active, more active than the white queen. B takes c5. Okay, b takes c5. Okay, so if we go back to move 16, B takes C5. That's a good question, isn't it? B takes C5. I wonder about C4 actually. Is that a good move, C4? Because then C5 might be under fire. Say takes. Oh, it's check. No, it's check. No good. Soham, that looks like a reasonable alternative to the game. Can anyone see why? Can anyone answer Soham? I'm having trouble myself. Maybe A4. Sorry, A4? Is that a move? So if queen A5 C4, if queen B6, I don't know. Queen B6, maybe A5. Possibly A4 is a reasonable move here. I don't know actually, but if anyone has the answer or can work it out, please let me know. So let's go back though to the main path of the game. So what happened to review that? So black took the queen. We had the queens coming off, and then rook C1. So white's rooks are kind of active. King E7. Check. Now knight B5. So there's dangerous threats like D4 and bishop D4 maybe. Also F4. These knights, this knight in particular is a bit of a target on E5. So rook HD8. Now D4 kicking the knight and winning a pawn. Now knight takes A7. So with a more active rook, already some damage is done. We've got a passed pawn here. So rook B7. Bishop D2, parrying the threat of knight C3, you know, check. That was a threat which needed to be parried. And now A4, pushing that passed pawn. Passed pawns are meant to be pushed. Knight C4. Now knight C6, guiding the pawn forwards, getting rid of the obstacles. Okay, so white's got a healthy A pawn here. This is difficult now for black. He has to move the rook as well, so that's been threatened. So rook DC8, and then the knight comes back centrally to E5. Not minding losing a pawn here to knight E5. There's probably a reason why that's not too good. F7 would be on if knight takes. King takes, I think rook takes F7. And then we've got things like F4 check maybe. So black didn't take on E5 here. He played actually knight D6, attacking the rook. Okay. Rook D7. So it's difficult to defend D6 and F7 now. So how does black do this? Rook A6. But now we have a very dangerous attacking move played against black. Rook A3, just swinging the rook across. So it wasn't just about the pawn, it was about this rook being activated to come into the game like this. And this spells doom for black, this move, Rook A3. So G5, check. Coordination from white, he's winning further material. F7 is going to drop at minimum. So knight F4. Now white takes, check, and takes on F7. And here black resigned actually. Black resigned. So let's have a look at this game to get a better handle on it in overview and summary. Let's look again at what happened in this French defence winnower. So initially black didn't play like the mainstream move c5 but delayed it. White played a3 as if black played c5. So c5 was played now, but black now rejected the invitation for some of the sharpest lines involving gambiting the g7 pawn. Black instead played king f8. And now we see black putting pressure on the queen side, in particular c2, which had to be handled kind of with an artificial looking rook move. And now a strategic, bishop exchange, which white wasn't too concerned about, but he played bishop d3 with the option of c takes d3. And now this capturing away from the centre with d takes c5, because it seems to fit the position, justifying that queen e3. So black gets his pawn back with queen b5, threatening the pawn on c5 and this queen b1 check. And white really, out of all this, gets active rooks now. And it's with the active rooks which leads to winning the first pawn actually very shortly from this position with rook c1. With these rooks disconnected still, that's one of the issues about king f8, I guess we can say in retrospect. That black's rooks are not connected very quickly. One of the side effects. A question on live stream from Lord Osiris: if black was going to play knight g6 anyway, why not castles instead of king f8? You want to go back to castles instead of king f8? Just to check that position. Okay. Okay, we'll remove 21 here. Let's just check that. Queen g4. If black had castled, I suppose bishop h6, you've got knight g6. H4? Is that dangerous? Takes maybe h5. Don't know, maybe black thought this was more dangerous to castle here, but it's an interesting alternative. Maybe it is playable, unless anyone can see a major objection. It looks as though it might be playable. Okay. Again, it's difficult for me to answer that now. I can't see. Maybe castles is playable as well. But king f8 was chosen in the game. So let's go back to this position. More active rooks here, and it's kind of winning. Oh, sorry. Soham22 writes on ChessBase server, for castles bishop d3. I think maybe the main line. Okay. Thanks, Soham. So king e7 check, and white's winning a pawn now after knight b5. He's hitting this pawn with all these guys on that pawn all of a sudden. And if a6, I think knight d6 is dangerous on f7 and then d4, hitting this knight. So white's winning a pawn anyway, so white wins a pawn. And so the other thing which comes up now of interest is here this move a4, because a4 is not just about the passed pawn, it's about this rook later coming in rather niftily via a3. So that's ready and waiting to come to a3. It stopped at the moment, of course, with knight c4. But now after knight e5, this knight's been removed from that control of a3 for this rook swing, in effect. So rook a3 is the killer punch now. Rook a3, bang. Killer punch from the left. And it's winning more material in the game. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that one. Let's have a look at another win by Edouard. Okay. Just get from my clipboard of selected games. Okay, so here he's playing black. Edward's playing black, and he plays actually against c4, c5, symmetrical English. It's a fairly stable way of playing against the English opening. So knight f3, knight c6, and now white tries for a small advantage with d4, which, you know, increases the pressure on the d file for that d5 square. Usually white's control of d5, but we have here not a passive move, d6, you know, knight f6, say knight f6, g6, bishop g7. That would be one way of playing the position, but actually Edward chooses a more energetic approach. So he plays knight f6. After g3 he plays e5, not minding weakening d5 quite considerably, but he's trying to get active play. After knight b5 he's getting active play. He plays check, and after bishop d2 evicts the knight back, and now liberates his d5 square with d5. So black's playing very energetically for that d5 square fight here. So c takes, knight takes. And for bishop g2, just supporting d5. Castles, and now knight b6. And black is potentially preparing to castle this side as well as this side, if he can just move the queen. After knight e4, bishop e7. Very comfortable looking, you know, bishops here, eyeing you know, the colour complexes. Bishop e3, which is a target now for knight c4. So the bishop retreats back rather artificially, and black doesn't mind exchanging off queens. And again, doesn't castle or anything. He just plays knight d4 now, attacking e2. Why not? You know, attack e2 and knight c2. There's no, doesn't seem to be a problem with that here. But the point was to shield the d file, so now he can castle queenside. Wow. So black's managed to castle queenside. So very nice position it seems for black. Rook f1. So I think black's reached a very comfortable position at the opening. h6, denying white's use of the g5 square. Knight g5 might have been useful. b3 evicting a knight back. But does it go back? No, it goes forward to that a3 square. Because maybe knight c2 is going to be useful. e3. Whoops, pardon me. e3. And now the knight goes into c2. Forcing white to play bishop takes a3. So he's losing the dark square bishop, because otherwise he'll be losing material. Now knight a4, as if, you know, maybe the c file is going to be good, as well as b6. Question from Sam: why not 8 bishop b4? Trying to exploit the weakness of the diagonal of d6 square with a check. Why not 8 bishop b4? So at move 21. Okay, you want to move you want to move back to move, okay, so at move 21. Bishop b4, bishop takes b4. Okay, so if check, Maybe just king here. Is it a big problem? Because I think if takes, you just take, and if queen d6, you got queen e7 protecting e7. So you got pressure on c4 anyway. So if there isn't take, I don't know. Bishop takes b4. Is it possible here, Soham, for black to take just the knight here? Yeah? Because then we're on c4, aren't we? So if bishop d6, you can just take on c4. And then, you know, maybe check and queen d5 later. What do you think about that? Yeah? Is that possible? A takes b5. No, but what about A takes b5? What would you do here with white? I think this is okay for black, this position. Looks okay. As I say, if bishop d6, I think you can just take on c4. Pawn up. You've got the A file, and also you've got this queen check. And if you want to evict this, you've also got knight d, maybe rook a6 for a knight move. Okay. Yeah? Interesting though. Okay. So we'll go back to move 21. So knight a4. Black plays king b8. Now knight ec5. There might be some compensation somewhere, but probably need to engine check that. Actually, I think black was, you know, if black can get away with it, it's going to have a good position. So bishop d5 parries bishop on b7 here. After e4, bishop c6. So black's got nice control of the d file, and this bishop's now hemmed in by its own pawn. So rook ac1. There's a threat now of knight takes a6 check and rook takes c6. So that's parried with bishop b5. So black's still got a very nice active position. Look at this rook. Look at this bishop, very nice. Look at this. This knight's a bit strange. But this bishop's nice as well. Bishop g5, crossfire of the bishops. Look at this. This one's over there and that one's over there. Nice crossfire. And in fact, we see here, if rook c3, then there's bishop d2. And if rook a1, then there's knight c2. And if rook d1, I think still knight c2 is strong to come to d4. So I think white's been outplayed here. White's been done over, it seems, after bishop g5. He's forced into this unpleasant decision here to play the move f4. So black takes, and now white kicks the bishop and tries to liberate his own bishop now again. So e5, so a temporary like pawn sack. Rook d2 with the possible threat now of rook takes g2 and bishop c6 check. Knight e4, but now rook d4. So we're on a4 as well now. But there's another problem here. Bishop takes h4. So white seems to be falling to bits. But he's got active knights here. Rook ed1. Beautiful move now from black. Tactical move for positional improvement of the position. Knight c2. So the knight's immune because rook takes d1 check. So knight c2, the knight comes from the rim to the centre with great effect. Very powerful effect in this game. Okay. Bishop f3. Not sure of the exact purpose of bishop f3, except for holding up d1 a little bit. Rook hd8, putting more pressure on d1. Now knight d6, as though there's pressure on b7. But look, f4 is taken for b7. And now we have a nasty check. Oh, fork prevention. Was it bishop f3? Okay. But white's walking into a horrible situation now after knight e3. Because, look at these squares covered. All of these squares are covered by these two pieces now. And after knight takes b5 was played, allowing a mate in one. Mate. White was mated. Oh dear, oh dear. Oh. Maybe white was in time trouble. It was approaching move 40. This is move 36. 3-day time limits. Maybe the time was going to be increased at move 40. White may have been in severe time pressure. It's nice how black equalised, I thought. Very energetically, though, in this game. With the moves played. So check, and then it's a6. So so we should really check out this thing. You know, bishop takes b4. I think either takes or knight takes b4. We need to check that out. But in the game, the knight moved back, and allowing the energetic d5. And black seemed to get a nice position. I don't know, this bishop e3 allowing knight c4 was a bit strange because the bishop just retreated back. So black had an easy time, I think, from here after knight d4. Was able to castle queenside, easy time. And this knight a3 wasn't, you know, it was quite useful on a3 to be able to pounce into c2 at some point, any point. Okay, so he got the dark square bishop, and white's light square bishop's now blocked in. So black's bishops dominate the whole board now after bishop g5, forcing a concession, the first major concession, f4. And this is starting to weaken, you know, white's position, h4. It's creating weaknesses. Even though white's pieces are getting a little bit liberated, he's created weaknesses. Like h4 is weak. That's munched. So we see this move, bishop f3. Alright, so as someone said, I think the threat now is actually rook takes, then knight e3, forking d1 and g2. So that was parried as well with bishop f3. So easy time for black, doubling up rooks, winning another pawn, and white's attack is harmless, it seems here. This bishop is actually very dangerous coming in for the kill. So knight e3, coordinated wall here. Difficult for white. You know, if bishop moved back, then we'd have check, and then bishop d7 here. that would be winning material. So white just allowed himself to get mated. Just took and now mating 1. Soham writes, so instead of 23 e4, pardon me, e4. Instead of that, rook ad1. Rook ad1. I think take and b5. Doesn't that win the knight on c5? Or nearly. No, maybe takes and knight c5. Interesting. Rook ad1 possibly. Can anyone see anything after rook ad1? Is that a possible improvement? It doesn't seem that brilliant for white though. Bishop g2. This position. Yeah. Don't know. Anyone? Rook ad1. Is that a potential improvement better than e4? So white played e4. Don't know. White, black's 2587 by the way. Sorry, white's 2537. His opponent, Andrei I can't pronounce it. Shilakachev 2537. Okay, I don't know. He plays e4 here, not rook ad1. Yeah. b6. All right. You say b6. Hang on. Oh, sorry. d5 is a liability. Hold on. You take on g2 first, and then play b6. Maybe. Don't know. Don't know. Sorry. Any ideas, Soham, yourself? Doesn't black look okay though here? Black looks absolutely okay, doesn't he? b6, there's knight d7 check, yeah. Yeah, possibly it's an improvement on the game, possibly. If it's engine checked, if someone engine checks it, that might be an improvement for the game. Okay, so in the game, it was white's downfall, but let's look at a third game then of Romain Edouard. Okay, here was white against a 2-6-3-7, someone higher rated on FIDE, Christian Boyer. So e4 from white. A Sicilian defense. Knight f3, e6. So this can lead to like the pin variation, Sicilian pin variation. White's not too afraid, it seems, of bishop b4 here. Sometimes I'll be a bit worried about this pin on c3, but White's not worried. Black actually played queen c7 anyway. Bishop e3 from White. a6. Now queen d2, walking into another potential pin against the queen with bishop b4. Knight f6. And White just castled queenside rather cheekily, not minding bishop b4. So f3, you know, saying back, do your worst with the pin. Knight went back to e7 here. Knight de2, reinforcing against bishop c3. Now d5, very energetic. So e4's actually going to be temporarily sacrificed by White in this game to relieve this pressure. This next move by White is a temporary pawn sacrifice here. Bishop g5. Okay, so after d takes, White takes on f6. Pawn down for the moment. But queen d4 hits the bishop and f6 and e4. Okay, so black gives up the dark squared bishop. After knight takes c3, the problem for black here is if he carries on munching, well, f6 is attacked. So if he takes, you know, queen takes f6. So he throws in the check, but here he can't like carry on munching because now he's in a pin. So he attacks the queen, and the pawn is still pinned now with queen c4, keeping an eye on e takes. And now, you know, the pawn can be regained, it seems. And if f5 is weakening more squares, you know, maybe the f file is going to be useful. If f5, you know, maybe takes bishop e2 and then rook f1. So black gives back the pawn now. Black gives back the pawn with castles. So White regains the pawn with advantage, a nice position against the 2-6-3-7 opponent. So White's played this with no fear and regained this pawn, and black has doubled pawn. So White's doing well. After e5, a delicate little move, queen c5. Bishop e6. Now bishop c4, one of the points of queen c5 was to play bishop c4. Exchanges off the light square bishop. After rook ad1, now queen b3, just hitting basically b7. Not minding knight d4. But is White in a position to win b7 because his king is on the b file? You know, what about this vicious b file attack? If White dared win that b7 pawn, you might ask. Well, this is actually what happened now. Knight d4, and White dared to win b7. Queen takes b7. So he's going right into this attack. He's won a pawn. He's a pawn up. Going right into this attack. He wins another pawn, 2 pawns up, and now black sacrifices a rook. Bang! What? Because the thing is, after this check here, White will be mated now. If king here, then there'll be knight c2 mate. But White had seen this. He just casually plays king c3 now. So black sacrificed the rook, but as it sounds, check, queen e2. Okay, White defends c2, check. The king dares march forward with king c4, knight d4, and now it's White's turn to throw a punch. Knight takes f6, check, and now he attacks the rook, knight d7. And also now there's queen f6 check as a threat. And here actually black doesn't seem to have a knockout blow for white king. Black actually in this position resigned. Black resigned here. So a 30 move game in the seemingly dangerous pin variation where white was cheeky enough just to castle queenside and sacrifice a pawn temporarily. It seemed to work out really well. So let's have a look at that again. So pin variation of Sicilian, where the pin wasn't that effective. Queen d2, the pin. After knight e7 retreat, d5, and now just aiming to, you know, fracture black with bishop g5, the structure. Sacrificing a pawn temporarily and regaining the pawn with advantage, it seems. The nice thing about this position was this upcoming maneuver here. Queen c5, very nice for bishop c4. Queen c5. So this bishop c4 is a very nice move. And now the cheekiness of playing queen b3, just with the idea of nabbing pawns on the queen side. So it's really testing black to the limit. Is black's attack really that strong here? White munched on the queen side and allowed this seemingly dangerous rook sack. There's not much substance to it here. The steam runs out. White's just a rook up, it seems. Especially after check, knight d7. Black resigned. Okay, 3 interesting games there. If you haven't already, you know, check out my YouTube channel. I'll be uploading this as well, or you can see this broadcast here on ChessBase. But check out my YouTube channel, where I've also got other videos like the evolution of chess style recently. 2 games of Alexander Alekhine. Okay, so yeah, hope you enjoyed today having a look at those 3 games. I'll be here for the next few minutes if you want any more comments or questions. Otherwise, you know, have a nice week, and see you next week. Thanks very much.